The DPE looked at me after the steep turns and said, "Grade A." 24 hours earlier, I was sitting in my car thinking, I might not be cut out for this. I failed my private pilot check ride. And honestly, this is a sentence I never thought I'd have to say. And I didn't fail because I couldn't fly the airplane. I didn't fail because I was wildly unprepared. And I didn't fail because the check ride was some impossible test that nobody could pass. I failed because I made 2 mistakes. And those 2 mistakes were enough to end the check ride. But the weird thing is, I'm actually happy that it happened. If you don't know, a check ride is the final test to get your pilot certificate. An oral exam, then a flight, both with the FAA examiner. This is the full story of mine. The oral, the flight, and the part where it didn't go as expected. Not the highlight reel version, the actual thing, mistakes included. Because I think that's the version that's worth actually watching. So, paperwork started 7 a.m. IACRA, all the stuff you have to get through before the actual exam even starts. Oral exam ran from about 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So a solid 2 hours of the DPE trying to find the edges of what I knew. The first one that got me was on the sectional chart, restricted airspace. There's a blue barbed line on the legend and I blanked on what it meant. And here's the thing, I didn't just guess. I pulled up the sectional chart, legend right in front of him, right there, and looked it up. And you know, that's not a fail moment. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to know your resources and use them. The next one on the oral that I stumbled on was weather, cloud ceilings. He asked me about cloud layers and I said, broken clouds don't count as a ceiling. And I heard myself say it wrong in real time. Few, scattered, broken, wait, broken is a ceiling. I caught it and corrected it out loud and moved on. And that's the kind of moment that feels like a disaster in your head. And it's actually just, thinking live under pressure. And then he got into icing. Can a private pilot fly into knowing icing? And honestly, the answer is layered. A private pilot isn't automatically barred by the certificate itself. If the aircraft's IFR and IFKI equipped, but I was taking my check ride in a Cessna 152, no de-icing equipment. So flying that specific airplane into icing isn't just a bad idea, it's illegal. Knowing the difference between what the certificate allows and what the airplane allows, that's the actual test. Then, finally, the last thing was the regulations, a flight review, 6156. I knew everything about it. Every 24 calendar months, an hour ground, an hour of a flight with a CFI. The expectations, if you're adding a rating or done a proficiency check in that window. I could tell him the entire substance of the rule, but what I could not do for about 10 seconds was remember that it's called a flight review. And there was actually one more that I remember with passenger care, like motion sickness, what to tell a nervous passenger. And I got turned around and told them if they were had motion sickness to look inside the plane. Because I remembered if you get disoriented, setting on the instruments gets your back on disoriented. So I just stuck to my guns and I was like, yeah, I would just have them look inside. But that was outside and that wasn't a huge deal. So 2 hours later, I'd passed the oral and I wanted to be honest about how that actually felt because it wasn't a relief. It felt like I barely scraped by. Like he kept probing until he found the edge and of exactly what I knew. And I just happened to land on the right side of it every time. So the oral's done, time to fly. Except for the winds had other plans. We were looking at 21 knots, gusting, and that's not a grit your teeth and go number, especially not for a check ride. So I discontinued, passed the ground portion completely, flight portion on hold. And that was a weird limbo to sit in. You're half a pilot and half not. You pass the hard part everyone warns you about, and you're just waiting on weather. Except waiting on weather turned into 3 more trips to the airport before I ever actually got this check ride flight off the ground. During my second attempt, I show up right on time at 9:30, exactly when the DPE told me to be there. The student ahead of me ran long, so I didn't get out to the plane until almost 11. I go to pre-flight and there was no gas. 20 minutes standing around waiting on a fuel truck, and the DPE is on me the entire time. Not exactly the headspace that you want to be in walking into a check ride. We finally get into the plane. I'm about to take off and I look up and there's cells building right over the exact airport that was my first checkpoint on my cross country. So I tell him straight up, I can't take you to the first point. We've got cells forming there. I want to head south, knock out other ACS items, and come back to the point last if it's clear. He just says, yeah, if that's what you want to do. So I switch runways before we even take off, and if I'm honest, some part of me already knew I should just cancel the whole flight. I was buying myself a little bit of time instead of making the call. And honestly, good thing I did by that time though, because by the time I taxied to the new runway and rechecked the weather, there were more cells building. Nothing extreme, but enough that I knew this has to be a cancel. Here's the part that actually got me. While I was taxiing over to the new runway, I was so deep in the go, no-go decision, south route, cancel, reroute, weigh it again, that I forgot to put in my crosswind correction while taxiing. Basic stuff, and the DP tore into me. Told me flat out that he was about to walk back to the hangar because he didn't feel safe flying with me. That's about as close to failing in real time as you can get without actually being official. But I canceled the flight anyways, and later, one of the CFIs at the school asked him, what would you have done if he actually took off? And the DP said he would have aborted the takeoff and failed me on the spot. So canceling in that moment was actually the Checkride. Now the third attempt, I showed up at 6:30 in the morning, and there was a squall line inbound. I canceled before we even taxied this time. Trying to wait it out until about 9 o'clock, I'll watch the radar and then eventually called it. By the time I actually got airborne to fly, the practical for real, it was attempt number 4 weeks after I'd passed the oral. And here's the part I could have left out of this video, but I'm not going to. So when I finally go up for the practical, I wasn't in a good spot going into it. And the how matters here, not just the outcome. So I'm gonna start from the beginning. I was in Michigan that weekend for a wedding. Quick turnaround, fly out, fly back, check ride Sunday at 7 a.m., Saturday at 6 p.m., Frontier cancels my flight home. No explanation. Now I've got 2 options. Neither is cheap nor fast. American through South Carolina or Delta through Atlanta. I book American because it's cheaper and almost immediately get a delay notification that would blow my connection and make me miss the check ride completely. So I cancel and book with Delta instead. At the point, people are telling me straight up, maybe this weekend isn't meant to happen. Maria texted me, cancel the check ride. And this is where I made my first real mistake. Before I even got near the airplane, I had get there-itis. Forecasts looked perfect for Sunday, and I decided I was gonna get home no matter what. I landed in Tampa around 2 a.m. after more delays, get maybe an hour and a half of sleep, and drive straight to the airport. On top of that, I had not flown in 3 weeks. Looking back, I can name exactly what was running through my head. A macho attitude stacked on invulnerability. I know how to fly. I'm well within my limits on these maneuvers. I'll be fine. That's not confidence. That's the exact thing that you're trained to catch yourself before it actually costs you something. And it showed up small at first. First leg of the cross country, I missed starting my timer. That's it, the whole mistake. But it rattled something loose. The DP was not happy. There was this awkward silence where I could just tell that was a borderline bust right there. Finally, it says, okay, turn to heading 120, set up for steep turns. First one, I nailed it. Genuinely textbook. Second one, I was in my head, nerves creeping in, and mid-turn, I had this thought, fuck, I don't know my heading. My heart dropped, I scrambled for my reference points, glanced down and saw a number that didn't line up with what I expected and just rolled out anyways. Just confused in the moment, and that was the bust. 2 items. That's what caused the bust. The timing flow, that I forgot to set the timer, and turning out of that steep turn way too early because I was too focused on what had just happened with the time and thinking in my head, I'm about to fail, until I actually did. So that's what got me to my disapproval. And honestly, my instructor was frustrated on my behalf. Told me flat out I was a safe, competent pilot with genuinely good stick and rudder skills, and that I got dinged on a small procedural thing while some sloppier pilots have passed. And honestly, he's not wrong, but I didn't want to sit in that. I took ownership of it because the tolerances are the tolerances. I missed them for real reasons, and blaming the DP doesn't fix anything. Fatigue, lack of currency, losing my flow for 30 seconds, those are human factors. They're on me to manage, not on him to overlook. So here's what I actually had to sit with afterwards. This wasn't a flying skill problem. I know how to fly the airplane. This was a pre-flight discipline problem, and I'm safe problem. Was I actually fit to fly that day, or did I talk myself into it because the date was on the calendar? There's an ego hit that comes with something like this. For a minute, I felt like, I don't know, like an ass pilot, honestly. Like the stick and rudder stuff didn't matter because I'd botched something so basic. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something else. Checkride bus that you own completely without excuses, that's not a blemish, that's a story. Airline hiring panels, interview boards, down the road, they don't want a pilot who's never made a mistake. They want a pilot who can tell them exactly what went wrong and exactly what they've changed. That's accountability. That's the actual job. So I've changed what I can control. Strict flows instead of relying on memory. Timing habits built into checklists instead of something I do when I remember. Locked visual references instead of eyeballing it. 24 hours later, 6:30 a.m., Zephyr Hills, I was back for the recheck. It's a quick flight when you come back for a recheck. You're not redoing the whole test, you're redoing exactly what you messed up on. Started the timer on the first leg, nailed the ETE, steep turns, locked both references, precise rollout, both directions to standards, and when it was done, the DPE didn't just say you passed, he said, grade A steep turns. Now take us back, private pilot. Here's the bigger picture on this, because I don't think this is really a story about steep turns. Private pilot is the hardest filter in aviation. Something like 80% of people who start this journey don't finish. And it's not usually the advanced stuff that gets them. It's this exact transition, non-pilot to pilot. That's the wall. I could have walked away from my bus blaming the DPE, blaming bad luck, blaming anything but myself. Instead, I own it completely. And that's the difference between a smudge on my record and the foundation of everything that comes after. Instrument rating, commercial, CFI, every one of those is going to test the same thing that this did. Can you be honest about what went wrong and fix it? I already know I can. I've got the story to prove it. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking my first passenger cross-country, flying Maria on her first cross-country with me. That's the next video, so if you want to see me in my first flight with my first passenger, subscribe and you can see how it goes. See you next time.